Hey guys, I'm here. Welcome back. Today we're going to be checking out a new Rockstars breakdown for Ahsoka Episode 1. If you haven't seen my reaction to the premiere episode, you can go check that out on the channel right now. It's available. Both episodes are available right now to check out. The breakdown for 2 is also out, but I'll probably be posting that one tomorrow. Well, let's go ahead and jump into this thing, man. Make sure, if you're not already, I assume most of you are, but if you're not, make sure you're subscribed to New Rockstars. Their breakdowns are fantastic. I highly recommend them, as well as their merch store. But let's go ahead and hop into that breakdown. Here we go.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Star Wars Ahsoka Episode 1, Master and Apprentice. Yet another Star Wars moment that makes Qui-Gon Jinn wish he was born just a few years later for medical technology to heal stab wounds.
Well, okay, let's be honest. At the same time, Maul was cut in half and somehow survived. So Qui-Gon, what's stopping him? I've talked about this a lot. It's a difference in philosophy. I believe the Jedi don't fear death, and there was other things that needed to be done at that time. They probably couldn't get to him quick enough, and also he's more than willing to become one with the Force. So I don't know. That's just kind of that's always kind of been my personal explanation for that. Otherwise, I don't know. Anyway,
I am loving this series so far. It's doing some interesting stuff with Star Wars lore. I got some theories, folks. My Easter egg breakdown of episode 2 will come to this channel tomorrow, and me and Tommy's Wookiee Leaks discussion of episodes 1 and 2 are over on the Break Room channel. Please subscribe to that channel. And the SAG-AFTRA has informed us that entertainment journalists like New Rockstars are allowed to cover movies and TV shows like this during the strike, but we support these unions in getting a fair deal from the AMPTP. All right, let's get started. We open with a red Lucasfilm logo with some amazing music from composer Kevin Kiner.
Dude, that is something I have forgotten to talk about in both my reactions up until this point. The score is so good. Like, from that to the track that Sabine is like jamming to as she's just cruising down the highway, to just the whole background orchestral throughout the entire run of the show. Especially the theme that plays when Baylan is approaching that dock at the beginning of the episode, like with those trills of the piano kind of mixed in with all the other tones. It was just like, oh, it's so sweet. I loved it.
Kiner composed all the music for Clone Wars and Rebels, but often what you heard on those shows were just leitmotifs to John Williams' Star Wars themes. But in some rare moments, especially in the later years, Kiner's true talent really came out. And here, there's this unusual percussion. Framing the story of Ahsoka is what I consider to be a story of witchcraft and astrology. Way more than I expected. Whereas normally the Lucasfilm fanfare has a mix of red and blue lights flashing over the metallic heads, now it is only the color red. We see
I didn't even notice that.
C-3PO,
I didn't even notice that the color never changed.
Cameo this season. Then the head of an HK assassin droid. Then the helmet of Marok. That's the mysterious new Inquisitor who joins Baylan and Shin. Then Huyang, then a stormtrooper, then Chopper, and then finally the Mandalorian Night Owl T-visor design of the helmet of Sabine Wren. Red is also the color of a new take on the Star Wars opening crawl, which is incredible. It's red instead of yellow, and rather than bending backward into space, it just scrolls upward. So why the difference? Why the prominence of the color red here? Well, I think it's because we are in a dark era where a new narrative is being written. It's not a story of ragtag resistors bringing down an evil Goliath. Here, the good guys start the story in charge, and they are letting control slip away.
Oh, that is a good point.
Crawl catches us up with who Ahsoka is, who Morgan Elsbeth
I like
is,
that.
and who Thrawn is. Now, I've made some other videos
the looming
about Thrawn,
darkness
but
that's
he
been
is
building
awesome.
up in the
Character who
shadows.
1991, heir to the Empire, Thrawn trilogy, a character who is brought back into Star Wars Rebels, an animation voiced by Lars Mikkelson, who will play the character on this show. He's a blue-skinned chiss, an Imperial Admiral, a brilliant individual. We last saw him at the end of Rebels when he and Jedi Ezra Bridger were zipped out to hyperspace by a pod of Purrgil hyperspace whales. And just so we're all clear, Purrgil, P-U-R-R-G-I-L, is plural. You don't say Purrgils, just a group of them is called Purrgil. It's okay, we're all kind of on a learning curve with this show. And remember, Morgan Elsbeth is that Beskar spear-toting woman that Ahsoka Tano dueled on Corvus in The Mandalorian, which ended with Ahsoka saying, "Where?"
That makes that so much more apparent now that we know Corvus. Anyway.
Is Grand Admiral Thrawn.
And oof, if we have to do this, Ahsoka Tano is the ex-Jedi from the Clone Wars animated series, the apprentice to Anakin Skywalker, who left the Jedi Order after being wrongfully accused of a Jedi Temple bombing, and she later came back in Star Wars Rebels as the rebel agent codenamed Fulcrum, who joined the crew of the Ghost. Look, if this is all new information to you, we are in the middle of a Rebels recap series. Be sure to watch those. Okay, we see a round-hulled ship with New Republic insignia passing beneath us, not over our heads, but beneath us. This vessel is from the Mon Calamari fleet. We saw Mon Calamari ships like this in Return of the Jedi. That's why the bridge has the same swivel chair that we saw Admiral Akbar sitting in, and in Rogue One, Admiral Raddus sitting in. Captain Hale is played by Mark Rolston, who played Drake in Aliens. And
oh shit! Okay, I thought he looked familiar.
AKA Yo-Yo from Glow, and the Navigator droid is voiced by Bonnie Wild, who worked in the sound department for The Mandalorian.
They're early. It isn't Home One.
Home One was Admiral Akbar's flagship in Return of the Jedi, and apparently continues as the New Republic's fleet flagship to this day. They
Hell yeah, man.
Home because Mon Calamari converted their aquatic cities into starships for the Rebel fleet. The approaching ship is an Eta-class shuttle, which is significant because these were used as Jedi ambassador shuttles during the Clone Wars. It approaches the Mon Calamari ship now with its down-facing wings framed to look like it is closing in on this ship with a vice grip. The comms officer reports,
that's neat.
Jedi.
and I
Didn't think about that.
Droid turned and said too, like, wait the This episode is titled Master and Apprentice, referring to these hooded visitors. And yes, they do recall Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan visiting the Trade Federation.
I'm sure he'll bring it up because that is just par for the course anytime I stop to say something half the time, but they're not the only Master and Apprentice throughout as a focus in this. Obviously, there is these two. There is the broken dynamic between Sabine and Ahsoka. There's the reflection upon Ahsoka and Anakin. And there's even Morgan Elsbeth's and supposedly, from what we've heard, Grand Admiral Thrawn.
At the beginning of the Phantom Menace, they are visiting Jedi, but there is something off about them. They use Jedi hardware, Jedi clearance codes, but they are not Jedi. Since Baylan survived the Purge, we learn later that could explain how he has old Jedi clearance codes. Their names are Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati, which is significant because Skoll and Hati are the names of the wolves in Norse mythology who chase the sun and the moon across the sky in hopes of devouring them. Just like these two hunt a star map lined with loath wolves to chart their course across the star.
That is something that I also failed to bring up as well, because the Loth Wolf, as much as the Loth Cat, but the Loth Wolves have always been very important to the story of Rebels, to Ezra, and everything that's been kind of going on. And the fact that they are named after wolves is a detail I am disappointed I did not remember or even think to point out. When I was talking about the origin of their names, didn't click for me until after the fact. I was like, crap, I've already posted this. Whoops.
Throughout this video, I will be pointing out the significance of wolf imagery because I think these names were chosen by design. Baylan is played by the late Ray Stevenson. He passed away earlier this year, and it's super sad because he's so good on this show.
Yes.
That's why this episode ends with for our friend Ray. Baylan Skoll is an old Jedi who, based on his age, would have been a contemporary with Anakin Skywalker. His apprentice, Shin Hati, has a Padawan brain, telling us that despite them not being Jedi, he does train her in the Jedi tradition. They carry lightsabers, not the color red, but orange. It's a subtle distinction, but it is intentional. Dave Filoni chose this to indicate that they aren't Sith who carry red blades. They are something in between. As Shin slashes through these New Republic officers, in the foreground you see one poor officer with a blaster in his holster. These smug New Republic officers just were not expecting to fight. In the background of this hangar, you can see New Republic X-Wings and A-Wings, and they're painted blue, perhaps indicating that the Blue Squadron is back in commission since the Battle of Scarif. Baylan confirms,
we are no Jedi.
If you watched Rebels, you know that this line is hugely important to Ahsoka, who had a similar line in her epic duel with Vader in the season 2 finale.
Anakin Skywalker was weak. I destroyed him.
Then I will avenge his death.
Revenge is not the Jedi way.
I am no Jedi.
This show clearly wants us to draw a parallel between Ahsoka and Baylan. One master who gave up on her apprentice because she saw the nightmare extreme of the Jedi way. One master who thinks that he actually can do it right, but just doing it his own way, with orange. Kevin Kiner uses dramatic piano chords to score Baylan's slaughter.
Yeah, dude. Also, again, he'll probably point it out, but I like how Shin, immediately when she's like sicked on them, like she just is tearing. Like all of her movements are quick. and precise to take everybody down. Like, she's more energized, she's more erratic, which would come from somebody younger as well, and even more so, maybe a little reckless in a way. Maybe someone to play with her food later. I don't know. But I like that it just completely, she just takes off down the hallway mauling people. But then you cut to the scene of Baylan and his age and his experience. He doesn't waste a move. He casually takes his pace, keeps stern, forceful, and every move is precise. I loved how quippy it is. I saw some people call that bad choreography, and I was like, dude, no, that is just, it's the thematic elements that contrast a master and an apprentice. Oh, it was just, I don't know, man. Subjectivity, but fuck, man. I thought that was so good.
It's so good. And
He doesn't
Vader
waste
never
any
stops
effort.
moving, like Vader in the Rogue One killbox sequence. Vader also incorporated a levitating force choke. Baylan even uses the force to unlock a scomp link, which are normally so complicated only an astromech can crack them. This guy has clearly mastered the ways of the
That's
force
a good
in ways that
point.
we haven't seen since Vader, or I guess arguably Luke Skywalker. Morgan Elsbeth's prisoner jumpsuit is numbered in Orbesh 620, and she says,
Baylan, you are true to your word.
And well paid for it, Lady Morgan.
so it sounds like Morgan set up some mercenaries to break her out if she were ever captured. Okay, on to Ahsoka Tano. She explores ruins on a planet that we later learn is called Arcana. Structures built by Morgan Elsbeth's ancestors, we learn the Night Sisters of Dathomir.
Aptly named.
Morgan Elsbeth is a Night Sister of Dathomir,
Yup.
and this is a huge deal. The Night Sisters refer to a sect of magic-wielding female Dathomirians that included Maul's mother, Mother Talzin. This coven used their green sorcery to reanimate his legs, and the Night Sisters are awesome. Dave Filoni
Yeah,
based them on
dude.
the Witches of Dathomir from Dave Wolverton's 1994 Legends novel, The Courtship of Princess Leia, but the character, the sorceress Charal from the 1985 TV movie Ewoks: The Battle of Endor, was later retconned into a Night Sister from the illustrated Star Wars universe. So technically, they've been with us for some time. The Legends term was technically the Witches of Dathomir. With Star Wars Clone Wars, they were called the Night Sisters, but they were considered to be the same thing. And then in 2022, in the Book of Boba Fett Chapter 3, Danny Trejo's character, the Rancor Tamer, started talking about the history of Rancors, and he said this.
It is said that the witches of Dathomir even rode them through the forest and fens.
So making Morgan Elsbeth a Night Sister reframes her character from a samurai-inspired warrior and military leader that just supports Thrawn into more of a mystic figure who practices a different kind of sorcery than the Jedi or the Sith use.
Which is interesting too, because if she does have a close relationship with Thrawn in any kind of manner, it's interesting too because he likes to savor and cherish cultural relics of sorts from different planets, places, and things from people he studied or conquered or whatever. It'd be pretty interesting to have like a living one in his ranks, like the last Dathomirian or whatever. Would be kind of a interesting way to look at it if that were to be the case. And presumably, who knows, maybe Marin's still alive out there. One can hope.
One might argue an older form of magic, which is very, very interesting for this show. It's going beyond the Jedi and Sith legend. These Arcana structures were built by ancient Night Sisters, and 3 giant figures with bare feet align with the 3 inside the temple, and they are all dressed in the same kind of hooded garb that we saw Mother Talzin wearing. These ruins, you'll notice, are covered in these black...
You can even see scuffed red paint on the outer layer of the robing and those murals in the catacomb.
Hands, which at first I thought might be volcanic soil, but the way it ignites later makes me think it's kind of a black powder, maybe powdered rhydonium. The whole place was clearly rigged to blow up and keep its secrets from being found. And
Oh, I didn't even consider that the dust was what was exploding and causing that ripple. I thought that was just somehow the effect of the bomb itself. I guess in essence it is, but rather than being a byproduct of the bomb, I thought that was still the bomb wave. If it was a concussive ignition of the actual ground floor, maybe that's why Ahsoka was like, nope, we got to keep running. Because regardless of that, it's going to ignite the area, no matter how big the explosive device was. That's an interesting thought. I didn't even consider that.
you'll notice the sphere she finds is buried in the same material. The Night Sisters planned for perhaps this map to never be found. Alternatively, this substance might...
In that moment, I was also thinking of Indiana Jones, because you know how he replaces it with the bag full of sand to take the golden idol. In this, it was kind of a little bit of the reverse. You had to remove the sand to get the golden idol. That was what I was thinking in that moment.
The ashes of Malachor, which we see on Malachor in the Rebel Season 2 finale. They are made of the burnt and pulverized bones of the Jedi and Sith who fought there and wiped themselves out. These ashes are inhaled by Sith to imbue this Sith with the dark essence trapped within the remains. Yeah, it's really messed up, but it is awesome. Again, watch Rebels. Ahsoka does this awesome move of using the Force to spin her lightsabers through the ground around her and dropping herself on that disc to the level below. And she did the same move to escape the clone troopers in the Clone Wars Season 7 finale on that crashing ship. On the walls of this temple are engravings of constellations, the 3 Night Sisters, and these spears that 2 are holding. 1 is levitating. And again, 3 of them, mirroring the 3 witches, the weird sisters of Macbeth, which get referenced in the title of episode 2, Toil and Trouble. Ahsoka lines up these rotating pedestals, reminding us of like the Fifth Element or a puzzle that you'd play in the Tomb Raider games. Now, if Thrawn was lost in just the past decade, why would a star map to his location be buried in an ancient temple thousands of years prior? Obviously, this map points to a location Thrawn just ended up at. Thrawn didn't just go to a where, he went to a when, I think. And the pathway to that when where was lost thousands of years ago. In fact, Elsbeth's interest in Thrawn might have come from Thrawn being mentioned in old Night Sister bedtime stories that she grew up with.
That's interesting. She did say that he calls to her through space and time.
Thrawn ended up being this like 1885 Dr. Emmett Brown figure.
I wish you would have photoshopped Thrawn into that.
HK assassin droids waiting for her. Remember, Morgan Elsbeth used these on Corvus in that Mandalorian episode, but the way that first one was just frozen in place the moment Ahsoka
dude, it was
creepy.
so good.
It was creeping forward right until it was seen. Like you have to keep your eyes on it or it will rush at you. They fight, and these droids end up activating these thermal detonators in their chests just like they did on Corvus. And Ahsoka has to run for it and catches up with her T6 shuttle. Piloting it is Huyang, the Mark IV architect droid from the Jedi ship The Crucible, who appeared in Clone Wars as a professor who taught young Jedi about lightsabers and kyber crystals. I love that Ahsoka somehow tracked him down all these years after the Purge. He's voiced by David Tennant, so forgive me if I at times refer to him as Dr. Huyang.
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, God. Why did I think about that?
I love the detail of the atmospheric moisture on the cockpit canopy. Makes it all just feel so real. Ahsoka reminds Huyang that the Jedi ordered.
That's another thing I kind of want to touch upon. I think, like, you know, in The Mandalorian and some of the other stuff, like, you could tell when they're on the volume and stuff like that. You can definitely see, like, a distinction sometimes between the foreground and the background. I don't recall a moment like that in this, for me, that I saw that distinction. So far, the production design, the effects, everything in this feel movie class to me, in everything that I've seen. The only thing that I can minorly critique is that I do think some of the saber fights are still a little slower than I would prefer. But most of those fights that I would reference in that case are between people who, like Sabine and the Apprentice, who one I think is toying with Sabine, and Sabine, obviously, as we learned in the second episode, has not been keeping up with her training. So being a little rusty is excusable. Everything else seems to be lining up. Most of the Ahsoka fights, I think, are pretty solid. So that's just a little misnomer.
Does not exist anymore, and Huyang asked her how she got Elsbeth to confess the location of this map.
Let's just say I didn't follow standard Jedi protocol.
Yikes! Sounds like Ahsoka might have tortured it out of Elsbeth, perhaps using that force torture that Kylo Ren uses in The
I brought that up.
They get this call.
Fulcrum, this is Home 1. Do you copy? Over.
Still going by Fulcrum.
Fulcrum, which was Ahsoka's rebel codename during Rebels. On their approach to Home 1, they passed 3 X-Wings, which I'm just gonna assume are the ones piloted by Trapper Wolf, Jib Dodger, and Sash Ketter, because the cameo trio,
why not?
Famuyiwa and Deborah Chow, always shows up in these titles. Ahsoka's T6 soars past Home 1, matching the framing of Lando piloting the Falcon past Home 1 in the Battle of Endor and Return of the Jedi. Inside this hangar, Ahsoka is greeted by General Hera Syndulla, the Twi'lek captain of the Ghost and Rebels, here played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead. She wears a Phoenix Squadron patch on her sleeve. As in Rebel Season 2, the Ghost crew joined the Phoenix Squadron and Hera was promoted to the leader of it, and the back of her jacket shows the Ghost crew Spectre 2 patch. Huyang turns to look in shock at the teal navigation protocol droid that Shin Hati sliced. We saw this droid in the opening scene.
That's a good little detail.
Huyang shares 3PO's sense of mortality. They meet in one of the Mon Calamari council rooms that we saw Mon Mothma giving a briefing in Return of the Jedi, with the same circular benches. Ahsoka tells Hera that the map contains the location of Thrawn, whom Hera thought died in the Battle of Lothal, but Ahsoka said it was never confirmed.
If Thrawn survived, does that mean Ezra?
Yes, they are recapping the finale of Rebels when both Ezra and Thrawn disappeared with the Purgle. Up until this point, Hera thought both of them were dead. This Mon Calamari officer reports,
General, The Defense Council is requesting an update on the incident.
Now, this is not Admiral Akbar. Admiral Akbar didn't have this blue color, and this officer has a patch with a single dot on it, which means first officer or lieutenant.
Yep.
But this character does sound like him. We should know that Eric Bowersfield passed away in 2016. Okay, onto the planet Lothal, the recurring setting of the Rebels series. We see Governor Ryder Azadi giving a speech. Ryder Azadi was a prisoner on Lothal in season 2, but broke out, who knew Ezra's parents and joined the Rebel cause. He was voiced by Clancy Brown, who plays him in live action here. Also on this dais is Senator.
Dude, it never fails to bring me joy seeing Clancy Brown in something, man. I just hearing his voice is one thing, but seeing him and hearing his voice is just a double whammy, man. The first thing I ever saw him in, if I do recall correctly, was Pet Cemetery 2, though. Anyway, Kurgan.
Jai Kell, another character from Rebels, the cadet in the Lothal Imperial Academy alongside Ezra Bridger. Kell was believed to be Force sensitive. Vinnie Thomas plays him here, but the animated version was voiced by Rufio actor Dante Mosco. They're standing in front of this commemorative mural. We saw this in the final scene of Rebels. Sabine Wren painted it. She's quite the artist, and it is the same exact 2D illustration. It depicts the whole Ghost crew.
Some very minor
Ezra,
differences.
Kanan Jarrus, Zeb, and Chopper, Loth Cats, and we see 2 Loth Wolves. 2 of them, one light, one dark. Could this mirror Skoll and Hati as the wolves of Norse mythology? Are they, in a way, fighting on the same side of the Ghost crew? So Ryder asks Jaikel,
Could be.
Where is she?
actually, I think you can see Sabine's speeder bike in the lower right in the far distance, in the background on the ground there. Okay, set to some rock music that is definitely not common for Star Wars. Sabine Wren, played by Natasha Lee.
Okay, that's something I gotta point out too, because it's something I've wanted to address. I love that Star Wars, as of late, has been focusing on building out the sound of the music in the world. You know, it's not all the Cantina Bop. You know, it's not all Max Rebo, like from the Mongolian throat singing kind of metal grunge kind of vibe that we get with the music in Fallen Order, to them expanding that roster into all kinds of different musicians within the Star Wars realm. To this, I'm just loving that we're getting to learn a little bit more of the kind of musical ecosystem of the universe. I don't know. I like that.
Bordizzo speeds down this Lothal highway. She's wearing this helmet with some Lothcat drawings and the Orbish letters of B, AE, and B, or Babe. She also has a Phoenix
nice.
Squadron patch on her jacket, though later in her box
Also
there is another
accurate.
Phoenix Squadron patch, which I wonder might be Ezra's. Meanwhile, the Orbish on the traffic overhangs reads Caution, and then later, Sector 7, Sabine is chased by 2 E-Wings. Now, previously, these only showed up in Legends literature. First introduced in the Dark Empire comic, they were known as escort shuttles introduced during Thrawn's campaign to rebuild the Fallen Empire. Sabine seems to have a familiar relationship with this pilot, and notice his call sign is Spectre 2-1.
Yeah.
So Spectre was how the crew of the Ghost numbered themselves. Sabine was Spectre 5, Kanan Jarrus was Spectre 1, Harris Syndulla was Spectre 2, Chopper Spectre 3, Zeb was Spectre 4, Ezra was Spectre 6, and then later on, Hera and Kanan's son, Jason, was Spectre 7.
Where
So
is he?
Continue that tradition with all the Lothal pilots. The astromech droid that shorts out is actually based on the vintage R2-D2 toy from Kenner with the teardrop indents for the red and the blue eyepiece.
I was gonna say, it looks like a potentially maybe even a newer model with the way that it's designed. It looks a little more sleek than rustic. So I don't know, just something I noticed. But yeah, I like, okay, it's an interesting like thing coming back to like an old concept piece. Gotta love Dave Filoni for that kind of stuff, man.
This is really fun Easter egg there. Sabine lives in a communication tower that looks like Ezra's roost. Lothal Net Comm Tower E272.
Yeah,
Seems like she's
I
just
imagine
moved into
it's the
home
same
that
thing.
He started the series in. On the walls, she's painted several stormtrooper helmets that have been X'd out. You can also see some drawings of Lothcats, Loth Wolves, Chopper, and some stacked stones. It might be a nod to her Jedi training of having to stack stones, like Yoda did with Luke on Dagobah. And we learn that she is kept as a pet. My favorite character in the series, this spotted Lothcat, which looks like a mix of VFX and the wide shots, but in close-ups, a practical puppet, which is similar to the mix of VFX and puppetry that brought Grogu to life. Just like Grogu, I want one of these things. Lothcats, some later, are native to Lothal. We actually saw one in live action growling at Grogu in The Mandalorian. As Sabine feeds this furball, in the foreground under the table collecting dust is her old Mandalorian helmet. Sabine came from the Mandalorian House Vizsla and served as an Imperial weapons specialist before she defected, but her family on Cronus remained loyal to the Empire. She briefly wielded the Darksaber. She got trained by Kanan in Season 3, but she handed off the Darksaber to Bo-Katan Kryze. Sabine had always kept her hair short because her scalp would get hot under the helmet, so the fact that her hair is grown out now tells us that she's left that warrior life behind. She plays a hollow recording from Ezra Bridger, who is played in this series by Eman Esfandi.
Sorry for disappearing on you. As a Jedi, sometimes you have to make the decision no one else can. We're not really family, but you're like a sister to me. I know your fight isn't over, and now I won't be there to help you. But I'm counting on you to see this through.
Oh, wow. So like Tony Stark in Avengers Endgame, Ezra Bridger knew what he was about to do, make a sacrifice play with Thrawn in the Purgle, and he took a moment to make a goodbye recording before that final fight. I like the detail how he rubs his head when he says, we're not really family, because that was just a recurring thing in Rebels. All these members of the Ghost crew had their own families that they were either running away from or dying to get back to, yet they still loved each other. And clearly Ezra doesn't want to insert himself in between Sabine and her family. Morgan Elsbeth tells Shin that she's a Night Sister of Dathomir.
You're a witch. A survivor.
Damn. So Elsbeth rejects the pejorative of someone who would use sorcery for whims, instead reframes the idea of being a Night Sister as a believer who holds closer dogma in order to survive over the ages. Someone who has survived in the way that the Jedi and the Sith have not survived. Shin still doesn't trust it though.
What thread is she spinning?
No, it's not witchcraft.
Yes, Elsbeth is obsessed with the idea of fate and prophecy. And
tying back to the witches again.
Spiders and the fate spinning thread and weaving the tapestry of the future. But Baylan, notice, no longer
3 witches of fate too.
Superstition. But with Baylan is an Inquisitor who we still know little about, Marok. Their helmet is similar to that of the 8th brother in the Rebel Season 2 finale. That character supposedly died, but reminder that Inquisitors are Jedi hunters recruited by Darth Vader and Palpatine after the Purge, all of them former Jedi, to hunt down all the other Jedi refugees that are still in hiding. We know this one's an Inquisitor because all Inquisitors carry this round-hilted lightsabers that spins like this. Sabine dreams about Ezra, and we hear his voice saying,
Remember.
I'll go ahead and make it clear too, and I mentioned this in the thing. I'm not one of those people that believe it's Ezra. I think that's contrary to the information we've got, and honestly, it wouldn't make much sense. As cool as it would be, I don't think it's Ezra. Some interesting ideas. I know some people have been throwing around Star Killer, because Sam Witwer apparently has been credited in the show somewhere. But, you know, he also does voices for Star Wars too, and he always just he'll have a walk-on role sometimes. But, Barriss Offee is also somebody who's a very strong contender who we haven't seen ever come back up, whose fate is also up in the air.
And if you look closely in the corner of this room behind her are some Stormtrooper helmets, including a few Scout Trooper helmets. They kind of look like the one Zeb stole for Ezra from that Scout Trooper who jumped on board the Ghost.
The kid wants your helmet. Sorry.
They also wore some Scout Trooper helmets when they first went into the Jedi Temple on Lothal. There's just a lot of different instances that they would have these from. This shot of Sabine looking out from the comms tower at the 2 X-Wings and Ahsoka's T6 mirrors the opening shot of Ezra in Rebels Season 1, Episode 1, when he looked out at the Star Destroyer that arrived to Lothal. Writer Azadi scolded Sabine.
You were missed, Sabine. Everyone was there.
Not everyone.
Yes, Sabine skipped the ceremony because it didn't feel right without Ezra there. Kevin Kiner doesn't sample John Williams' themes exactly, but he does include some riffs that evoke it, like he does here.
Yeah, you can feel it.
Sabine re-enters the T6, and Kevin Kiner includes some sweet flute and clarinet and bell chimes, which really is just some classic John Williams tones that you hear in movies like E.T. Her bunk includes drawings of more Lothcats and Chopper, some stacked stones, and some TIE fighters. Rebels ended with Ahsoka rejoining Sabine to go off in search of Ezra Bridger, but now it's implied that Ahsoka taught Sabine in the Jedi ways, and that it didn't go too well.
You never made things easy for me, Master.
There is nothing easy about being a Jedi.
I didn't think about it that way. So, like, I was thinking, like, what we saw in episode, like, at the end of episode 2 was, like, a reshooting of the epilogue. But obviously, Ahsoka's not in the same cloak. She doesn't have the staff. So there's, like, key differences, obviously. So if that's the case, maybe he is right. Maybe the epilogue scene we saw was her being like, hey, let's go train and see what we find along the way, and then they split, and that was just meant to homage that. Thoughts putting that out there? How do you feel?
Yeah, Ahsoka knows this quite well. All her Jedi relationships ended in tragedy. So Sabine steals the map and gets tracked by Shin's probe droid, reminding us of Maul tracking Qui-Gon and Phantom Menace. Meanwhile, Hera tells Ahsoka...
Lots of episode 1 parallels.
Anakin never got to finish my training. Before the end of the Clone Wars, I walked away from him and the Jedi.
The framing of this shot with Hera's projection behind Ahsoka's shoulder mirrors the framing of Ahsoka in the Lothal Jedi Temple in Rebels Season 2, Episode 18, when Anakin's ghostly form appeared over that same shoulder. Father and turn into Vader, and finally here she began to come to terms with the fact that her parting ways with the Anakin was followed almost immediately by Anakin's fall to the dark side, and that guilt she carries with her to this day. Sabine inspects the map sphere and deduces that the 3 witch statues align with this 3-pronged symbol, realizing that the map's key is contained within it, and uses this Rubik's Cube twisting of its different faces to realign it and activate it.
And summon
again,
Pinhead.
Significance of the number 3. 3 witches, 3 faces. 3 is the witch's number. It's also the number of the Divine Trinity in the Star Wars mythology of the Father, the Daughter, and the Son of Mortis.
I was about to say that.
Projects around the sphere the galaxy they are currently in with a path to another galaxy. Episode 2 explores this path to Peridia a bit more, and I'll get more into it in tomorrow's breakdown. But just to tease my theory, I think this map was built by the Rakatan invaders.
It's kind of what I was thinking too, actually.
Something explored in Knights of the Old Republic with star maps in that game.
But
and the path
there's
of the
other,
it
could be. And I checked with a lot of you guys because I wasn't sure, because like I'd always understood that Star Wars as a whole has always stayed within one galaxy, and a lot of you guys backed me up and confirmed that I was correct about that. Like, the neighboring galaxies do exist. I believe the Rishi Maze is a neighboring small, like, orbiting galaxy that exists, but we never actually go to it. But outside of that, like, everything we know within Star Wars has been contained up until this point in a singular galaxy, which is interesting to me. So I'm just curious to see if that expands in this.
To the Rakatans.
Well, obviously it's going to.
This theory, but the Lucasfilm team inserted a Rakatan Easter egg in Andor. Andor of all things. They want us to think about the Rakatan invaders. Sabine gets attacked by these HK droids. They steal the map. They blast her shit. She runs into Shin Hati, and she ignites the green lightsaber of Ezra Bridger. Sabine even starts patiently standing at the ready position, just as Ezra taught her to do with the Darksaber. But Shin is more patient. She lets Sabine charge first. Big mistake, Sabine. Notice how Sabine uses these desperate overhead chopping motions, leaving herself vulnerable.
That's why I'm saying, like, even though the choreography is not flashy, it does reek of her being extremely rusty or something of the sort. You know, and I think Shin was just keeping her cadence, her pace along to match, because she clearly had the power stance in this fight. The experience, she's been up to date with all of her fighting. She's active. She hasn't waned on her training. I think this is a case of, again, something that someone younger, especially given something outside the order, like this relationship she's got with Baylan, she's probably playing with her food, which wouldn't be typically Jedi-like, but they're not typically Jedi.
And she tries to rush to the end of the fight with just one power blow. I mean, to be fair to Sabine, this is the first time she's picked up a lightsaber in years, and Shin, we just saw at the beginning of this episode, got a whole warm-up round of New Republic officers with clumsy trigger fingers. And throughout this fight, notice how Shin fights Sabine closer and closer and closer to the ground until she stabs her through the side. I guess missing vital organs, because even after the stab, Sabine continues slashing, which I guess is the show's way of saying, nah, she's okay, she'll bounce back. But either way, this apprentice lost the battle of apprentices, because on the good side, the master and apprentice are still separate, and they're facing a master and apprentice who have had a lot more time together trusting each other.
Oh, that's a good point.
I love these closing credits. They show golden lines on a star map. This is the path to Peridia that gets talked about in episode 2. It's passing through constellations and words in an ancient language. They pass a Loth Wolf and a ring of Purgle hyperspace whales. Notice how all the different lines beam back to one destination. This is likely where Thrawn is and where Ezra is. Remember, the Loth Wolves and Rebels led Ezra into the world between worlds. That is a realm between points in time. It's the closest Star Wars has ever gotten to time travel. Yes, it's crazy, but based off of these first 2 episodes, it seems like we might be going there. The Purgle could
be
operate
interesting.
on a bridge that takes us through hyperspace, through time, and the reason this path leads to Thrawn seemingly in one destination, it's not because Thrawn just hasn't ever gotten up from his chair wherever he is. It's because that destination doesn't lead to a place, it leads to a when. More on this in tomorrow's breakdown.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I like that.
Research help with this breakdown. And again, please check out our Rebels rewatch series for more context on all of these characters. You can follow me on all social platforms.
Especially if you're just diving into Ahsoka raw. Check those out. I highly recommend them. That was a really good breakdown, man. They got me hyped up. Oh, man, I can't wait to see where this series goes. I can't wait to see the next couple episodes. Dude, I'm loving all of this so far. These first 2 episodes I thought were fantastic. You know, even like the one critique I had aside, it's more of a nitpick / observation. Like, none of it detracted from my enjoyment of the episode, even in the slightest. It was just so, the pacing, especially the first episode, it was so deliberate. It was so like lived in. Like, it didn't rush anything. It took its time. It was building us and letting us live in the world throughout. Oh man, the music, the choreography, the tone, the vibe, the locales, the visuals in general, and just being reunited with some of these people we haven't seen in some time, to follow up on a story that we probably for a long time didn't think we would ever get a conclusion to. And here we are, and I just can't wait to see what we explore in this show, man. But anyway, guys, what did you guys think? Were there any Easter eggs that you guys found that maybe they didn't mention here, or any parallels or symbolism that you guys can glean that was missed out in this? I'd love to hear from you all, so sound off the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video. Hope you enjoyed the reaction. If you did, leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe if you're not already. And if you're not already subscribed to your Rockstars, go check them out and do that. Link is in the description. And before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends: Manny Sharon, Ryan, Karen, Yori, Corey Scott, Margaret Grace, Melito, Robert Algano, Jeffrey Hale, M. Sephiroth, Jake and Cheryl, and Eric Official. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. That's it for this video, guys. I'll see you all in the next one. Till then, may the Force be with you always. Take care, everybody.